Hey everybody, Chris Riddell here again, and there's been a lot of videos going around on social media that have been created by bus operators, by folks who are trying to help the public understand the depth of the problem that's going on in the bus industry right now. As I shared with you in my last video, the industry's come to its knees. It's at a full stop. The industry understands it, they support it. We clearly understand the need for social distancing right now and to flatten the curve of this thing. There's no question. But the issue is that there's a lot of conversation about support going around. There seems to be two camps: people who support the idea of federal funding for businesses that are affected by this, and there seems to be a stimulus package that's really talking right now hard about bailing out the airlines. I know that the cruise industry is lining up looking for financial aid, and the truth is everybody is, right? I mean, if you are a self-employed small business owner, you're looking for try to figure out how you're going to survive this thing. If you're a restaurant, you're trying to figure out what you're going to do. There's nobody, well, there's very few people who are completely immune to this thing. But as the ground transportation industry, we have been looking for help, and I wanted to try to explain the reason why. The ground transportation industry as a whole isn't very sexy. It's kind of on the fringes, right? Not very many people know about it. When I talk to people, what do you do? I'm in the bus business. What does that mean? Oh, you mean the charter buses that drive around? Oh yeah, those guys. Okay. We throw around numbers like there's, somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000 operators in the United States. And the truth is that number actually is kind of hard to understand when you're talking about, you put it in context, there's over 26,000 restaurants in New York City. So when you say something like there's 3,000 of these businesses, it's hard to put that into context of the importance that this industry plays in the world. So I was in my car and I was thinking about it, and here's what I came up with. When you think about your car, you think about a lot of parts, right? There's systems. You give your engine a lot of attention. If the engine isn't running right, you really want to focus on it and get it fixed. You change the oil. You make sure that the air conditioning system is serviced. You make sure that everything's working the way it's supposed to. You change your tires. You change your brake pads. You do all these things. You worry about the transmission. You worry about these big systems. But holding in my hand right now, I have a 10-cent fuse. This fuse is for the ignition system. It's small. You probably never think about it. But the reality is that without this thing, without this little piece, the rest of this car is rendered useless. Transmission won't work, engine won't work, nothing will work because this fuse has gone bad. In the United States and Canada right now, we are, as the ground transportation industry, this fuse. Let me explain. When there's a hurricane, if you live in the South like I do, when there's a hurricane, buses are brought in from all over the country to evacuate people. When kids go back to school, when the schools open again, buses will show up to pick them up and take them to school. When college kids fly back to their colleges, buses will pick them up at the airport to take them to the college. There are countless reasons why buses are involved in our life, and quietly and without much fanfare, every day on a normal day, buses pick people up and take them safely to their destinations. I have friends that run airport shuttles, that run trips to casinos. I have friends that do tours through parks, dramatically reducing the impact to the environment, both in terms of the numbers of people who get on their buses. It takes vehicles off the road, but also in the clean diesel engines that they've invested in. We connect communities. If you have transit system A over here and you have rural communities, we're the buses that pick people up and bring people to the cities to take advantage of the government-funded transit agency services. And we do all of it with private funds. We do all of it without government subsidies in most cases. There are a few companies that have government subsidies that are paid to connect cities, that the government helps fund equipment. But for the vast majority of operators, these are small businesses. That 4,000, 3,000, 4,000 number that I used earlier, most of those are small businesses. I've seen a lot of people on social this week that say, hey, these fat cat owners, these guys, they have the big companies and they have all this. There are those in the industry. There's no question. There are big operators, people who have generationally amassed a lot of equipment, that have huge businesses that span multiple states, and that may have the ability to self-fund their way through this issue. The problem with the idea of self-funding this is that while they're bigger companies, they also have much larger overheads. But the vast majority of this industry are companies that have less than 10 buses. And when I say the vast majority, I'm talking about 80% of this industry has less than 10 buses. These are family-owned businesses. These are guys that show up in the morning and do everything from work on buses to sell buses to answer the phones to clean the floors. These are not large corporations. These are not companies that have some giant bank account to try to float this. And the reason why it's so important that we include this industry in this conversation about rescue is that if we don't, we're going to see a lot of companies go out of business. And unfortunately, we're going to need them. You see, when the economy goes back and to push the start button or turn the key and goes to restart, if we don't take care of this little fuse, we're going to find ourselves in looking to call on them. The moment will come, whether it's a disaster recovery, an evacuation, whether it's a Super Bowl, whether it's whatever's next, where there's a huge group of people that need to be moved. We're going to look up and we're going to realize that that little tiny industry that we didn't pay much attention to and that we didn't care about isn't there to help. And as you can probably imagine, there aren't a lot of options when it comes to moving large groups of people. If you're trying to move 100,000 people in a stadium, there isn't a lot of options of how do you move those people around. You can't have them all drive their own cars. You can't. Everybody can't take an Uber. And so what that leaves is an industry that's in desperate need of support during this time so that they can be there when the time comes to support those who are in need. This isn't a plea for some one-sided handout. This is really an industry that is in need of support, that has been underrepresented in this conversation of who needs help. There's going to be a lot of businesses that go out of business. There's going to be a lot of bankruptcies from this COVID-19, not just in the motor coach industry, but around the world. And there simply isn't enough money anywhere to apply remedy to everything. There isn't enough money to go around, that every small business won't be affected, that every household won't be affected, that there just isn't enough money. And so we have to be, as a people, cautious about where these monies go. We have to look at, are the airlines the right places? Are the cruise ships the right places? Where are the places that this money should be going to make the biggest impact so that when we restart this economy, that we have the resources available to us that we need? Not very many people have included the ground transportation industry in that. But I'm telling you, this 10-cent fuse will cause your car to stop working completely, just as the loss of a huge percentage of the motor coach operators in the United States would as well. It will bring things to a halt. And so I ask you to please consider including the bus industry in the bailout package. Not just for the sake of bus companies, but for the sake of students, for the sake of disaster relief, for the sake of taking cars off our roads and congestion, for the sake of ensuring that in the future we don't take 10 steps backwards in easing congestion in our cities, in reducing pollution in our air, in utilizing group transportation as a part of a global solution to some of the biggest problems that are out there. So please, consider including the motor coach industry. Don't leave us out in the cold, because we want to be there the next time you need us. I hope you're having a good day. I hope you're staying safe. And I hope that you'll give some thought to this conversation.